An ordained minister has decided to give up God for a year.
How the heck do you just up and become atheist after being a pastor?
What I'm most worried about right now is figuring out how I can live openly and honestly.
I am finally free to be me.
I have no idea how to find friends or become a part of a community that's not religious.
What does life look like after church, after religion, after God?
That's it in a nutshell.
This is the Life After God podcast, a conversation on the space between belief and unbelief and beyond, with your host, Ryan Bell.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of Life After God. I'm so happy that you have decided to join us today for this third installment of our new podcast. And I'm so excited also to tell you that we officially launched Life After God yesterday, Monday, August 31st in the evening. And so you can now go to www.lifeaftergod.org and see all of the components of what makes up Life After God. And I hope you'll do that, read the About page, click through the pages, and see what we have going on. I'm really excited. This has been something that's been incubating in me for 9 or 10 months, and I am just really happy to be introducing it to the world. Last week on the podcast, I spoke to Greta Vosper from her home in the Toronto area. She is one of the advisors and consultants for this new organization. I'm thrilled that she's decided to be a part of this. I'm just excited what the future holds. So please go over there and subscribe to our email list. Go to our Twitter at Our Life After God, and our new Facebook page, which is also facebook.com/Our Life After God, and keep track of all the things that we're going to be doing in the very near future. If you are someone who is in the midst of a deconversion or just deep doubt about your faith and your religion and would like someone to walk with you through that process in a coaching relationship, I am starting that work as well as a part of Life After God. And so please reach out to me at ryan@lifeaftergod.org, and I would be happy to talk with you about what I do in that regard. In the very near future, we will also have weekend events and longer retreats for people who want to gather together in person and have a deep dive on the process of deconversion and some tools to help process through that and develop some skills and virtues that will help each person navigate their own journey in a very particular way. I'm also trying to do this work full time. I was recently laid off from my job at Path, which I loved very much, but they had a restructuring, and I totally understand that process in the corporate world. So I am now looking for new work, but at the same time, I'm trying to do this work relatively full time. And so if you would like to help me get this thing up and running and to support this podcast and the work of starting Life After God, I would encourage you to go over to my Patreon page. The links are on the website as well as in the notes of the show. But it's patreon.com/lifewithoutgod. Any amount helps. A monthly contribution to the work that we're doing means so much, and I appreciate it, and thank you in advance for that. In a few weeks, I'll be traveling to Dallas to be a speaker at the Apostacon conference. If you have not yet registered to be at Apostacon, you should absolutely do that. Go to apostacon.org and check it out, see everything that's going to be happening there, and sign up to be there. It's going to be awesome. Penn and Teller are going to be there doing a special performance and being a part of an evening of magical inquiry. My friend Neil Carter is going to be speaking there. David Smalley from Dogma Debate will be there, as will Shelley Sigel, the beautiful and wonderful singer-songwriter that we've come to know and love. If you have not found Shelley Sigel yet, go find her on the web. She's fantastic. And my friend Dan Arell from San Diego will be a speaker. I'm really excited about that weekend. So that's September 18 to 20, coming up in just over 2 weeks. So go check it out, and I hope you can join us there. Before we get into our featured interview this week with my friend David Hayward, I want to just take a moment and pause and reflect and remember our friend Dr. Oliver Sacks, who died on Monday after a short battle with cancer. He was a neurologist and an author best known for his work with patients suffering from encephalitis lethargica, which was documented in the 1973 film Awakenings, in which Robin Williams plays Oliver Sacks, a fantastic film. If you have not seen that film, I would highly recommend finding it and watching it. He's also well known as the author of The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. He's recently author of his memoir On the Move, which I've been slowly working my way through. And more immediately, if you want to get a flavor for the man that Oliver Sacks was, I would encourage you to go and read his recent columns in the New York Times. When he found out that he was soon to die, he wrote a column in the New York Times called My Own Life, in which he reflects on his mortality and the shortness of the time that he has left and what it means to face death with grace and dignity, even when you don't have the assurance of eternal life or the belief that anything exists after death. It's a graceful and mature articulation of our mortality and what it means to come right up to the edge of that and stare it in the face and be grateful for the life that one has. I know many of us who have gone through this deconversion process really have questions about death and how to face our own mortality when all of our lives we've been promised that if we did the right thing, we would be sure of eternal life. So I have found his writing in the face of his impending death to be so inspiring. His last column was called Sabbath, in which he reflects on his Jewish upbringing and the fondness with which he still regards the idea of Sabbath, even though he is not a believer. It came out just a couple weeks ago, and I try to imagine what it must have been like for him to write that, knowing that he only had a few days left. It's a great inspiration, and I hope you'll go and find it. It's called Sabbath on the New York Times website. And just as a short tribute, I wanted to play this video, the audio from this video from 2008. It's on the Big Think website, and it's called Oliver Sacks on Medicine and Humanism. I think it's a fitting tribute to Oliver Sacks as we sort of say our goodbyes to him.
When I was a medical student 50 years ago, one of my professors once said to me, he said, Sacks, we've had a patient in who's delirious. He says, go see the delirium in room 6. He didn't tell me anything about the human being who was delirious. It was the delirium in room 6. This is partly how doctors speak, or they say the appendix in room 8. And it was this turned out to be a very intelligent and delightful old tea planter who had spent much of his time in the Far East. And in his delirium, I listened to him for hours in his delirium. And basically, an entire life, the events of a life, his journeys, his loves, his passions, his ambitions, everything was somehow mixed up in his delirium. And I realized that in a way he was presenting an entire life in these sort of strange, confused, incoherent terms. And I started to listen, and after a while I started to join in and make some comments. It was actually almost like someone being privy to a dream. But this made me feel very strongly that this wasn't just a delirium, this was a particular human being who was delirious, and one had to address him. And so the particular human being has always been central for me. It's not enough to say, that's a migraine, that's Parkinsonism. You have to say, what is life like for this particular person with migraine or Parkinsonism? Or whatever. How do they experience it? How do they respond? And so the human element and talking about life with something is certainly needs to be an essential part of medicine. I think it used to be, and then sometimes in the sort of mass medicine and quick diagnosis, and even with things like brain imaging, I think there's a tendency sometimes just to give a diagnosis and forget it. But certainly, that's people have to live with things.
Oliver Oliver Sacks died Sunday, August 30th, 2015 at the age of 82. Thank you so much, Dr. Sacks, for gracing our lives with your wisdom and love and insight. And now I bring to you a wonderful interview that I had with my friend David Hayward from New Brunswick, Canada, our second Canadian on the show in as many episodes. He has recently written a new book entitled Questions Are the Answer, and it features a number of his very insightful cartoons, which are darkly humorous about the nature of questioning and doubting and conviction, and sort of is a pictorial biography of his life of faith and doubt. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with David Hayward. I'm here today with pastor and cartoonist and blogger David Hayward, and he's just written a new book called Questions Are the Answer, and I'm just really excited to have him on the program. David, welcome to Life After God.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
You are the second guest on Life After God, and interestingly enough, the first guest was Greta Vosper, and I was I was kidding with her that we're starting off with a solid Canadian contingent here. You're in New Brunswick, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right.
So yeah. We've got the eastern half of, or the eastern third of Canada, pretty well represented here right out of the gate, which is not bad for an American, I have to say.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Typically, Americans forget that you guys are up there, so I just want to acknowledge myself that I've not left out Canada here.
No, you've done a good job. That's awesome.
So our mutual friend Greta, as we talked in the last episode, is going through a bit of a crisis. Her feet are being held to the fire by her denomination about her lack of belief in theism or there being a God. And you would think from the reaction of the church that this was something she just, wrote about on Huffington Post and everybody went crazy. But no, it's been 15 years that she's been talking about this.
Yeah. She has a couple of books out, right? One about prayer, one about belief, I guess.
That's right.
And so she's been with her church for, I think, 15 years or more, and has the support of the congregation that it is. I mean, it's gone through a flux in membership for sure, but the congregation she has now is alive and well, which is something to say for a local United Church of Canada church. And so she's going through it right now for sure. I think it's a very important case.
Yeah, in your last blog post, if I'm not mistaken, too, you had a great cartoon about her. People can find it at nakedpastor.com, of her being tied to a stake with the kindling at her feet, and the church administrator with the torch saying, yeah, I know it's United Church, but it's not that united.
Yeah.
Let's not get carried away here.
No. And I'm getting quite a bit of criticism for that, and saying that I'm dramatizing, I'm making matters worse, that I'm, stirring up flames and everything where there doesn't have to be any, that this is just a review, no sweat. This is normal. A lot of ministers get reviewed, and it's the church's right to review its clergy and so on. But no, I've been in the church too long. I'm always suspicious of authority when it does something like this. I don't think this is an innocent, review. I think there's malice there, and I think it's going to be an adversarial process for Greta.
It does feel like it's going to be protracted and really distracting from the good work that they're doing. I mean, I know when I went through I would never have called it a heresy trial at the time, and there was hardly a trial to speak of, but, my sort of expulsion from the church around different but similar circumstances. And I remember how distracting it was. It was all I could do to get a sermon together for that week, let alone do any meaningful ministry that week. So it's got to be a complete distraction to her and her congregation.
Yeah, it must be exhausting. And I went through a similar thing myself in 2010. when I left my church at the time, I wasn't expelled, but I and the leadership team came to an agreement